Welcome back, third graders, to our science lessons. Previously in Exploration 1, we analyzed features of weather that can be observed and recorded, including temperature, rain or snow, wind, and clouds. In Exploration 2, we're going to use instruments to record weather conditions and analyze the measurements to describe the weather patterns. We already know that we can observe weather, but did you know that we can measure weather too? You can measure the amount of precipitation or the liquid or solid water that falls from the clouds. You can also measure the direction of the wind and the air temperature. In your book's page 406, we can see different pictures of instruments we can use to measure weather. In the first picture, we can see a rain gauge. This rain gauge measures the amount of rain that fell in an area. We look at the markings here and we read the amount of rain in inches or sometimes centimeters. In the second picture, we can see a wind vane. This wind vane points in the direction from which the wind is blowing. So, for example, in this wind vane, we can see the rooster pointing in the direction of the west. So this means that the wind is blowing from the west. And finally, in the last picture, we can see a thermometer. This thermometer measures the air temperature. You have probably seen one of these around. The thermometer can tell us the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit or in degrees Celsius. We look at the red line and we read the number next to it. On the same page, number 5, we're going to write the weather tool next to the measurement that could come from one of the tools we discussed now. The first measurement says 1 inch. Whenever we read a measurement in inches or sometimes centimeters, we can assume that it is the measure of rain, so we need a rain gauge. Next measurement says 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Degrees Fahrenheit is a measure of temperature, which means we need a thermometer. Again, 88 degrees Fahrenheit is also a measure of temperature, so we write thermometer. From the east, whenever we see a direction, meaning north, south, east, or west, we can relate it to the direction of the wind, so we need a wind vane. 2 inches. We said that inches relate to the amount of rain, so we need a rain gauge. And finally, from the south. South is a direction, so we need a wind vane. On page 407, I need you to skip number 6 and go straight to number 7. In number 7, we're going to record the measurements from each tool on the lines below. In the first picture, we can see a rain gauge measuring the amount of rainfall. If you look closely at the picture, you can see the level of water. The number on that line indicates the level. In your books, the picture might be clearer. It shows 4 inches. In the next picture, we can see a wind vane. If we look at where the rooster is pointing, we can see that it is pointing towards the west. So this means that the wind is blowing from the west. And finally, we can see a thermometer. They want the reading in degrees Fahrenheit, so let's look on the left side of the thermometer. It reads about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Now in your book's page 408, we can see weather readings from 3 different days. We're going to observe these conditions in order to fill the table in number 8. In the table, we need to fill in the description of the sky, the amount of rainfall, the wind directions, and the temperature on that day. For day 1, we can see that the sky looks sunny. The rain gauge is empty, which means there was no rainfall. The wind vane is pointed towards the west, so wind must have been blowing from the west. And finally, the thermometer read about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So, in the table, we fill in what we observed. Description of the sky, sunny. Amount of rainfall, 0 inches. Wind direction, from the west. And temperature, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. For day 2, we can see that the sky looks cloudy. The rain gauge reads 2 inches. We always look at the bottom of the curve. The wind vane is pointed towards the west, so wind must have been blowing from the west. And finally, the thermometer read about 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So, in the table, we fill in what we observed. Description of the sky, cloudy. Amount of rainfall, 2 inches. Wind direction from the west. And the temperature, 82 degrees. And for day 3, we can see that the sky looks partly cloudy. The rain gauge reads 1 inch. The wind vane is pointed towards the north, so the wind must have been blowing from the north. And finally, the thermometer read about 78 degrees Fahrenheit. So, in the table, we fill in what we observed. Description of the sky, partly cloudy. Amount of rainfall, 1 inch. Wind direction from the north. And temperature, 78 degrees. Now it's time for the Do the Math activity on page 409. In number 9, we're going to use the data from the weather observations on the 3 days and answer the following questions. Look at the amount of rainfall for each day. What is the difference between the most and the fewest inches of rainfall? When we say difference, it means we need to subtract. So if we look at the table here, in the column amount of rainfall, we have 0, 2, and 1. We need the most and the fewest amounts, which are 2 inches as the most and 0 inches as the fewest. So, since we said we need to subtract, in our books we write 2 minus 0 equal 2 inches. Then we need to look at the wind direction for each day. What wind direction is most common or is repeated more than once? In the table, in the column of wind direction, we have from the west, and from the north. We can see that the west is repeated twice, so it is the most common wind direction. So, in our books we write, coming out of the west. And finally, we need to look at the temperature for each day. What is the difference between the highest and lowest temperatures? Again, when we say difference, it means we need to subtract. In the table, in the column of temperature, we have 86, 82, and 78 degrees. We need the highest and the lowest temperatures, which are 86 as the highest and 78 as the lowest. So in our books we write 86 minus 78 equals to 8 degrees Fahrenheit. On the same page, number 10 says, a barometer is also a tool that measures weather. Research what a barometer measures and what the measurement can tell you about the weather. Record your findings on the line below. This is what a barometer looks like. A barometer measures air pressure. Air pressure can tell us if a day will be clear or stormy. In Exploration 3, we're going to learn that satellites record weather conditions, and we're going to study weather maps to analyze and interpret data and find patterns in the weather. In your book's page 413, we can see 2 weather maps. The first map shows temperature, and the second map shows precipitation, or the amount of rain or snow that falls from the clouds. If you look closely at the first map, which city has the highest temperature? The color codes here help you easily look for the highest temperature, which should be colored brown. If you said Austin, then you're right. Austin recorded a temperature of 82 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the highest among other cities. In the next map, which city is getting the most rain? Again, the color codes here help you look for the most rainfall, which should be colored purple. If you said Springfield, then you're right. Springfield recorded rainfall of more than 2.5 inches in the rain gauge. At the bottom of this page, we can see a picture of a satellite. You've probably seen satellites before on TV or on the internet. Satellites rotate around the Earth. Scientists use these satellites to help them study and predict weather. This part of the satellite here scans or searches for precipitation. And this part here is a precipitation radar. It takes measurements of the rain or snow falling at certain places and times. In your book, pages 414 and 415, we can see two maps, one on each page. We're going to use both maps as we answer numbers 13, 14, and 15. In number 13, we're going to fill in the data table with the temperature and precipitation on the maps. First city is New Orleans. The temperature is 77 degrees Fahrenheit. As for the precipitation, the color of this city in the map is between red, pink, and purple, so we can write as an average 2 to 2.5 inches. The next city is Portland. The temperature is 64 degrees Fahrenheit. As for the precipitation, the color of this city in the map is red, so we write 1.5 to 2 inches. And finally, Buffalo City. The temperature is 46 degrees Fahrenheit. As for the precipitation, the color is yellow, so we write less than half an inch. In number 14, we need to find the difference in temperature between the hottest city and the coldest city in the map, not in the table only. So, difference means we need to subtract. Let's find out which two cities are the hottest and the coldest. If you look closely at the map, we can see that the hottest city is Imperial, which marks 92 degrees Fahrenheit, and the coldest city is Minot, which marks 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So when we subtract 92 minus 35, we get 57 degrees Fahrenheit. On the next page in number 15, what conclusions can you draw from the two maps? Choose all that apply, so we might have more than one answer. We have the following. Let's read each one and try to see if it makes sense. A weather map can show the weather for more than one place at a time. This is true since the map showed us different cities and the temperatures in each one. B, if you know the weather in one city, you know the weather in any other city. That is not true because the temperature is different from one city to another. C, weather can be different in different locations at the same time. Yes, this is true, as we mentioned before. Different locations mean different temperature and different weather. And finally, D, if two cities have the same kind of precipitation, they always have the same temperature. This is not true. Temperature and precipitation are not related. For example, in the maps, we can see that Imperial City and Minot City both have less than half an inch for precipitation, but their temperatures are completely different, where Imperial marks 92 degrees, while Minot marks 35 degrees. In your book's page 416, we're going to skip number 16 and go straight to number 17, where we use the bar graphs to answer each question below. For A, circle the number that shows how much warmer it was in New Orleans than in Buffalo. When we say how much warmer between two cities, it means we need to subtract. In the bar graph, we can see that New Orleans has a temperature of 85, while Buffalo has a temperature of about 79. So, if we subtract 85 minus 79, we get 6 degrees Fahrenheit. For B, circle the number that shows how much more rain fell in New Orleans than in Portland. Again, how much more means we need to subtract. In the bar graph, New Orleans shows precipitation of 4 inches, while Portland shows 0 inches of precipitation, so we subtract 4 minus 0, we get 4 inches. That's it for this video. In the next video, we will review lesson 1 and then do the lesson check and round up together.